Hello everybody, and welcome to the face reading of the people in the news. For those of you who are with me for the first time today, if you get interested in the subject of face reading, you can watch my YouTube's Face Reading Introduction and Face Reading 101 Part 1, Part 2. You can also buy my book, Face Reading Secrets for Successful Relationships. It is available on Amazon.com. Today we'll be talking about a person whose name every day is on the minds of pretty much 30% of the population of our planet. In modern terms, you can definitely call him a superstar. Every morning when Christian people say their prayers, 2.2 billion people in fact, they refer to a person they believe was and is the Savior of the world. In fact, they call him the Christ. Greeks called him Christos, which was the Greek translation of the Hebrew word Mashiach, in English Messiah, meaning the messenger. Yes, I'm talking about Jesus of Nazareth. There were thousands upon thousands of different publications of the four canonized Gospels, the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, John, and Luke. Then there are non-canonized, such as Gospel of Mary Magdalene, the Gospel of Philip and Thomas. Though they are not accepted as a part of the Christian Bible, nevertheless they do exist and also talk about the deeds and life of Jesus of Nazareth. None of them, either canonized or non-canonized Gospels, give much description of how Yeshua ben Miriam, or Jesus, son of Mary, actually looked. Countless artists over millennia attempted to make his portrait. Did he look like a Russian painter of 15th century Andrei Rublev envisioned him? Or like my favorite German painter Dürer of 16th century saw him? Did he look like Girolamo Romani of Italy painted him? Maybe like Diego Rodriguez of 17th century Spain? Or perhaps our contemporary Jeff Koons sees him. He was also portrayed in the movies. But how do we know how he really looked? So as face readers, we could figure out his personality and temperament. Well, we just may have such an opportunity. Did you hear anything about the Shroud of Turin? If not, I will fill you in. The Shroud of Turin is a linen cloth bearing the image of a man who is alleged to be Jesus of Nazareth. The cloth itself is believed by some to be a burial shroud he was wrapped in when he was buried after the crucifixion. The shroud is kept in the royal chapel of the Cathedral of St. John the Baptist in Turin, northern Italy. The most distinctive characteristic of the shroud is the faint brownish image of the front and back view of the naked man with his hands folded across his groin. The image of the man of the shroud has a beard, mustache, and shoulder-length hair parted in the middle. Forensic doctors have interpreted markings on the cloth as follows. One wrist bears a large round wound, apparently from piercing. The second wrist is hidden by the folding of the hands. An upward gouge in the side, small punctures around the forehead and the skull, scores of linear wounds on the torso and legs, swelling of the face, streams of blood down both arms. Here is a close-up. And after many studies, in 2013, a group of scientists, including a very famous Professor Fanti, used infrared light and spectroscopy, the measurement of radiation intensity through wavelength, to analyze fibers from the shroud. The tests dated the age of the shroud to between 300 BC and 400 AD. So, a 2013 study published in a theological journal concluded that the probability of the Shroud of Turin being the real shroud of Jesus of Nazareth is very high. Keep in mind, please, it is still a probability, not a fact. And yet I will give it a shot and talk about the morphology of the man of the shroud. Fortunately, I've got a lot of good help. Do you know who Ray Downing is? Ray Downing is an illustrator and animator whose career spans 3 decades, during which he produced artwork for scientific, medical, pharmaceutical, and broadcast industries. His clients include History Channel, Pepsi Corporation, New York Library, Zantac, and many, many others. Downing received an Emmy Award for individual achievement in graphic design and art direction for a collection of illustrations and animations of President Abraham Lincoln that were featured in a History Channel. Here Ray Downing and his Studio Macbeth team receiving the award. In 2010, Downing created a series of animations of Jesus of Nazareth based on the Shroud of Turin. They were featured in 2 subsequent History Channel specials, The Real Face of Jesus and Jesus, the Lost 40 Days. After receiving many requests from the public, Downing created 2 Jesus portraits, Jesus in death and Jesus resurrected, and made them available on his website. So based on the artwork of a master researcher and illustrator, the following is the closest portrait of the man of the shroud. Here it is. So let us do what we did with so many people already. Look at his personality embodied in his face, and also because Ray Downing gave us the pictures of a man's profile, here they are. We can also speak of his profile, which is of course will be telling us about his temperament, but first the face. It looks to me that his face is a Pluto. Here are a couple of people with the same facial morphology, just for your practice. So, what do we know about the Pluto personality? The Pluto qualities is actually an exaggeration of Mars. So let's first define Mars characteristics. People with the Mars personality are cordial and generous. They're the only personality out of 12 who have true courage. That is, if they see something which is according to them is not right, they do not think. They act spontaneously without regard of consequences. They also can be impatient and aggressive. Often, they do not have the patience to address issues. Instead, they fight to get their way. The Mars take risks and are accident prone because they do not take time to assess the situation, the circumstances, and have trouble foreseeing consequences. Of all sanguine personalities, they have the shortest attention span and the shortest fuse. If they love you, they shower you with love, and if you cross them, they are ready to kill. The typical Mars is not very loyal, but remember, the man of the shroud is not a Mars, but a Pluto. And though most qualities described above still apply to Pluto, unlike Mars, the Pluto are extraordinarily loyal. And also unlike Mars, they are capable to focus on one issue and go in depth studying it. They are good scholars and they are able to stay on track for a long time. Of all faces, Pluto have the most piercing eyes, and they use their eyes to make their way in the world. And now the man's temperament. Though neither of the pictures show us a perfect profile, we can use our imagination and get a close reading of what profile the man might have had. It looks like his forehead was tilted back and his chin was protruding forward, which both characteristics are really sanguine, of sanguine temperament. We cannot see the corner of his jaw, the third and an important feature in order to determine one's temperament. But we can guess what that feature was because we have another feature that will help. I don't think that in the last 2 years since I've been doing these readings, I shared this one with you. So here it is for the first time. The nose. The nose is a pillar of strength. And the corner of the jaw, the third characteristic that is missing in this case with the man of the shroud, tells us about the endurance factor in the person. So we can assume that the corner of the jaw more than likely would correspond with the shape of the person's nose. So what do you think? What's the best match? To what temperament the man's nose belonged? It looks to me it's either this one or this one. That is, his endurance factor was either that of a pure bilious or something between a bilious and a nervous, meaning a little bit less energy than a pure bilious would have, and yet still great endurance. So we have here a sanguine with a bilious corner of the jaw, with a Pluto face. So what does all this mean? Well, here is the summary. The man of the shroud, believed by many to be Jesus of Nazareth, came into this world with a profile which embodied the temperament of being always active, physical, muscle coordinated, short distance runner physically and mentally, having short attention span and short fuse, a man who was generous and had a true courage, that is, when he saw something that according to him was not right or fair, he acted without regard for life or limb. He was a great communicator and a person who was fun to be with, unlike your typical sanguine who has had not really much endurance and a short fuse, but also a short attention span. He, with the bilious jaw, had great endurance and therefore the ability to persevere. With the face/personality of a Pluto, he was loyal, inquisitive, a risk-taker, and a good learner. It seems that his upper lip was thinner than his lower lip, meaning he was keeping things to himself and shared only what he wanted to share. With all his public work, he was quite a private person. The eyebrows are pretty much straight across, meaning he was quite stubborn. His nose appears to be quite thin, revealing yet another sign. Remember his large inner face? Same, of emotionality and sensitivity. And finally his blue eyes, a sign of detachment if they were pale blue, or love and care if they were Venus-like deep blue. And this is the man of the shroud, who possessed the qualities of being a leader as a sanguine, yet sensitive to the pain of individuals, having a large inner face. Impatient as a sanguine, yet loving and loyal as a Pluto. Stubborn, the eyebrows, yet delicate and thoughtful, the thin nose. But in the multitude of the people on our planet, even 2,000 years ago, many people probably possessed similar qualities. But only one sparked so much interest, inspiration, and controversy as this man. Why? I'm afraid the answer is not within my field of expertise. I only can read one's temperament and personality. What people do with those qualities depends on the spirit within. And the nature of the spirit depends on their individual beliefs and their personal spiritual journey. And that is all for morphology of the man of the shroud, believed by many to be Jesus of Nazareth. Thank you very much for being with me today. Peace to all who want to live in peace.